Hello and welcome to Beaverdale Books. It's great to see you all here tonight to share tonight's poetry. Had too many tonights. Before we begin, I want to mention some upcoming events. Mark your calendars for children's author Lauren Joyner on Monday, July 21st. And she's going to be talking about her newest book, Silly Animal Tales 3. Then Des Moines Wallscapes Unseen, a coffee table book by Jim Zeller, is going to be on Wednesday, July 23rd. And Bruce White's with his book, The Pursuit of Citizenship, Past, Present, Promise, is going to be on Wednesday, July 30. All of these events are at 6:30 p.m. and you can find details on our website, or you can pick up a flyer at the register with all the information. Now, on to tonight's program. Charlie Peck's debut collection, World's Largest Ball of Paint, began with a world record. Through a series of fragmented narrative poems, World's Largest Ball of Paint navigates place and self, memory and remembering. Peck uses a cast of characters and poetic form to reckon with the past and the present layer by layer. Charlie Peck grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and received his MFA from Purdue University. His first collection, World's Largest Ball of Paint, is the winner of the 2022 St. Lawrence Book Award from Black Lawrence Press. Please join me in welcoming Charlie Peck to Des Moines.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. I'm not going to read for very long, and then I figure if afterwards, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. And so this first poem is the first in the book, and it's called A Small Sweetness. A small sweetness. I have to guess that he's dead by now. The man who offered $20 outside Macon to bring him to the Florida border. But before we punched Valdosta, he clipped out, clutching only a coffee tin and a pair of slippers. In the rear view, he marched lop-legged against the rain, and that's it. In the long alphabets of memory, there are no clean-cut ends, just the fat bits we bite when parts truck violently back. Gasoline fumes in a toilet stall, every hot crotch of summer '07, the pair of red canvas shoes I wore daily as my arm dipped in and out of a loud oven in the brick back of a restaurant whose name is long gone, but the key still sleeps in my glove box. When I was a boy, I thought my father spoke with an accent, stumbling through those midday liquor loops. Sex with you, one woman said to me as each foot slipped back into snow boots, feels like charity. It is good some mornings to feel tired, pressed between two breasts as a small voice reads the paper, the day too cold to consider, lazy garlic wandering the house. It must help that at the core of hurt hides some small sweetness, that when the chef burdens his hands working the grill, he told me to cook him up a shot. So I wrapped the cord, sucked the spoon, and dropped the plunger deep into the red flower bed spreading in his arm. His drooped eyes were not mine, so I felt no hate. Once in high school, my brother caught me bedbound with a girl, so she and I left, skipped the 6 blocks to her house to meet the garage door open, her father purpled and swollen, swinging from rafters, a bloated wooden chime. I think that rope must have been tight as a belt you can't unclasp fast enough in a heated hotel room to pull yourself out and be consumed by a wet, wanting mouth. I hated animals and knew it meant I was heartless. I was quick with a chef's knife, so people called me romantic. But it's not a butcher's red pool that guts me. It's the sister, who headphoned and high lay on her bed as her dad swung, a metronome under muted floorboards. Okay, so that's the first one in the book, and it sets a sort of a bizarre tone. But because I'm here, and I want to thank Beaverdale Books for hosting me this evening, and I'm visiting some of my oldest and dearest friends, actually. I've known Patty and Graham Link since I was, 4 years old? There's a poem in here, if I can remember. I feel silly holding a microphone talking to all of you in this room, sorry. Sorry, Facebookers. Excuse me. It's about growing up, I suppose. The radio show. Jefferson High airs a classic rock radio station, and this morning on the way to the grocery store, 2 seniors host the chemistry teacher to thank him for all he's taught them over the years, and everyone is blubbering, the microphone sounding wet with snot and tears, every 3 words punctuated by a deep flapping snort, and before you know it, I'm crying too, just thinking about Mr. Salton and his beakers, the safety goggles. What drama for a can of beans. Inside the sliding doors, they arrange the finest fruit at the front, but a watermelon is a hard sell when you live alone and don't eat. The iron cart's back wheel wobbles as I push, the steady thump-thump, thump-thump calming me. On the radio, Mr. Sultan explained why chemistry instead of julienned onions or giraffes, teeth whitening gel or butchered skirt steaks. I liked the way things always carried the ability to change. And I thought, wow, what horseshit. In my high school choir, I knew a boy named Preston whose sharp tenor cut cleanly over the sour note boys and girls. He wore a blue sweatshirt almost daily, his I'm fucked up sweatshirt. And if that dirty cotton crossed the carpet, you could expect slurs and pinpoint eyes. All the symptoms of dope before we knew the drug, or how the bags under his eyes were really perennial bruises from his father's hands. But man, could Preston sing. Now he's in prison. Stole a taser from an officer and robbed a gas station, which is the dumbest way to do it unless you beg to touch the man you're threatening to kill, which I guess is family some days. I said this to my sister, and she dropped a toenail into my coffee. She paints portraits. Her shower collects rings of acrylic around the drain. Once in college, I left the bar before last call, and stumbling through the back streets to my house, a man slipped through the bushes, his knife glinting in the streetlight, and all he could ask was, "Chuck?" My luck that my mugger shared a cell with me in county. My old mistake saving a slash across the gut. I wake each morning at 4:45. I put the coffee on, pull meat to thaw for my dinner. Pork chops on sale today, and I fill my cart. Before they signed off the air, Mr. Sultan said, "I can't wait to see who all of you become." As if he didn't already know. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say between these, I suppose. I just want to thank you all for spending your evening with me. Thanks, Patty. This next poem's called Noise. Noise. I once attended a stand-up show in Amsterdam, and not speaking a word of Dutch, I just laughed along with the crowd, letting myself get caught up with the noise. It's the logic of applause and food fights. I can't think about the bubonic plague without getting anxious. When I watch Planet Earth, I root for both prey and predator. The border between humor and disgust blurs neatly, so it's often hard to say. I was driving home from the grocery store last week and saw that my neighbor had painted and hung a new sign on his shed, "Thieves will be shot," and Kate asked, "Who's thieves?" In high school, a boy did a Gallagher impression after prom, smashing watermelons on stage with a hammer, his fake mustache falling off mid-swing. And then 2 weeks later, his parents received a bill for $30,000 to replace the pulp-smattered curtain. Or that time in second grade, after we had just moved, when a quiet boy in my class asked for a ride home. My mother, new to the city, got lost in cross-stitch neighborhoods in the fading light because the boy didn't know which was his, and he started crying. And my mother started to cry too. And we drove until the boy saw a familiar park, and eventually we found it, his house, and his mother was on the lawn with 2 officers, and she's crying too. And then the drive home after, my mother whispering, "Shit, shit, shit," and wiping her eyes. Thank you. Well, there was an anecdote I wanted to tell, but I suppose I had a meeting recently with the editor of Black Lawrence, and she was trying to encourage me to write a novel, which is an undertaking. She said, God, you have this great poem called Noise, and you just tell these facts of your childhood so well. And when I had to tell her that my mom never once drove a child around in the neighborhood until the police were called, she was just sort of dumbfounded that I just made this up. Which actually, I suppose...
That's called fiction.
Yeah, exactly, right? Which then, I suppose leads into the next one. But Dear Kate, do you remember when we went to the zoo? I'll never forget your face when that walrus cut you in line for snacks. It was never your style to be so patriotic, yet here you are, flag in one hand, croquet mallet in the other. I'm just a three-headed dog of myth, too much mouth for one gut. I'm sorry for the time I left you at the mall. You survived for 3 weeks on gumballs and orange Julius's, and when they finally found you in the closet of an H&M, you were so feral even the dogs hid their tails. I'm sorry I keep changing my story, that for every dead-end alleyway you find me in, there's a part of the past that chased me down there. I sold the lawnmower, so there's nothing to be scared of. Something big is happening, Kate, and lately the magnitude has been catching up with me in every gravel lot and pint night. I've become the last man on earth without the vaccine, infected entirely. Find me at the public park wearing nothing but cashmere and track pants. Behind the tire swing, we can try to get this back on track. Kate, we have become such anesthesiologists, terrified of the smallest error. What do you say? I'll roll up my sleeve and you can slide the needle in. On the way out the door, stop in the waiting room and collect my things. My bag's the one labeled not for human consumption, and I know that warning is another you'll test. Each train of thought, a caboose on fire. And so also the reason then that I led in this conversation then with my editor, she reminded me that, so when this book was selected, it was the winner of the St. Lawrence Book Award. And prior to publication, they'd spoken to me and they said, this is something that we don't do with poems because obviously they're made up or whatever, but we need to find out who this Kate person, we need to have her sign a release form because we can't publish this without her consent. And when I had to say that there's no Kate that exists, I just sort of made her up. She was sort of dumbfounded by that. And anyway, so I just thought it was funny. I'm only going to read a couple more poems, I figured, because then we'll have time for conversation and so on. I want to thank you all again for coming out tonight. I have to find where this one is. Forgive me. So these are the last. This is Algebra of Pleasure. It is an oxymoron. Yeah. Algebra of Pleasure. Like almond oil over smooth skin, I run the mop in the hardwood living room, open all the windows for the cardinal songs to flood through. Hot damn, I love the afternoon. A mad wind blowing from the Great Lakes while inside Jeopardy plays on TV. Alex Trebek, you handsome old thing. Rest in peace. I roast pork until it's tender and toothsome, uncork the last good bottle of wine and wait. Most days being home is like playing Monopoly with no dice, just aimless moving and staying out of jail. Once inside a Whole Foods in Indianapolis, I heard a kid scream rise over the jars of ghee and liquid aminos. I want coconut. She yelled and yelled until I was ashamed of my ciabatta and Port Salut, my bottles of Belgian air. I turned the corner to see her shouting at her stuffed horse, and I felt true love, for I also ask so much of those who can't meet my demands. I challenge parking attendants when the total comes, rage in the post office when the chain pen is inkless. I know an old German immigrant who sings the Oscar Mayer Wiener jingle to herself mindlessly all day simply because she loves how purely American that song sounds. I failed the algebra of pleasure that most master daily. I love the butcher with his coils of sausage, steaks stacked in a glass case, but hate taking a number, so I never go. Instead, I'll drool the dream of tenderloins and lamb shanks. Even the buttercream frosting on the birthday cake is too sweet and grits on my tongue. I pull the space heater out from the cellar and plug it in the slow-drying room, while outside I wring the mop into shrubs. Next door, my neighbor has his truck up on blocks and the hood popped. Some 80s hairband belts from his stereo, and though I can't make out who it is, I hear the front man in his leather pants and face makeup, a Motley Crue type glam that shoves my face into a dumb grin. My neighbor waves at me on my porch, so I nod the soggy mop back, like some wet and wild headbanger in a crowd. So this next poem is the reason that I said that I had to stand, because, well, I can discuss it afterwards, I suppose. But I recently just moved back from 6 years in Germany, and there's a lot of cultural references in what I write, and especially younger Germans, like my students age 20, 23 years old, don't get a lot of what I'm talking about. And this was very sad for me. This next one was very sad for me in Germany because I didn't know who I was talking about. And the title is Elegy with Rotting Pumpkin and Mick Jagger. They didn't know who Mick Jagger was, which kind of killed me a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah, that's how I felt too.
Yeah.
So Elegy with Rotting Pumpkin and Mick Jagger. Oh boy. Those final years before I left Nebraska, my mother spent all day sleeping in a green armchair or standing on the wood deck, looking out over the retreating tree line, scanning for a cardinal, a possum. The swaying figure of my father came and went as he pleased, and I felt then that something was wrong, something I wouldn't come to know until years later when I lived alone for the first time. Afternoons I sat and wrapped twine around the pink legs of a bird so they wouldn't splay in the oven's heat. It made sense then never to come home. That winter I stood naked over the iron grates on the floor as the heat blew and watched the snow cover the steps leading to the wood slats of my front porch. Sometimes there's nothing I can do to stop myself from hating the man in the auto parts store who doubts I can change a headlight on my own. And I hate him more when I walk back from the rain and ask for his help. I used to go to parties at night, have my drinks, talk to people. After I walked home alone, I'd watch the Rolling Stones play their sold-out show in Tempe, Arizona in 1981. Before the first chord hits, Mick Jagger points out and asks, "You feeling good?" And I'd stand in my living room wearing only my socks and try to imitate his hips and his lips, singing along, "Well, ain't I tough enough? Come on, baby, please." The morning would show and I would wake and work the kitchen. At the wood fire oven in the forest of the Florida Panhandle, now and then I'd lose a blob of cheese from a lasagna pan, and as it hit the oven's stone floor, I smelled first the melt, then the char. I wander house to house, room to room, looking in the desk drawers of strangers, each medicine cabinet a little different from any other, that quiet noise a doorknob makes when the lock is set. In a small room, my grandfather commanded glass to shape and soldered together lollipop reds and jay blues, the stained shards becoming finch or monarch butterfly, the desk lamp covered with a canvas sheet to simulate the sun's soft light playing on each sun catcher strung with fishing line from the exposed wooden beams. 9 blocks from his home, I worked at the Pepsi bottling plant in summers during high school. The warehouse floor sticking to my shoes with each step, and my hands in those days smelling always like syrup. When my grandfather died, my grandmother closed that workshop door and never opened it again. 12 years later, after the flood, the hinges swung open to a room of broken glass. The buffalo grass already turned brown in the cold, another dark sky moving across that North Dakota town. On my porch, a pumpkin rots, its dull ochre echoing that Christmas sky 10 years ago when I walked the white street home, each footprint behind me filling in. It's past 11 and I should be asleep, but on the stove is a pot of apples and oranges, cinnamon sticks and star anise. So this is the last poem that I'm going to read, and it's the title one, The World's Largest Ball of Paint. And I didn't realize that, I didn't realize until recently that it's not self-evident from the poem. And so I'll just tell you that when 2016, 17, something like that, a friend and I, we drove out to Alexandria, Indiana, where the world's largest ball of paint exists.
Oh,
and
there really is one.
Oh yeah, no, there's this man.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
No, there's this man in Indiana who sometime in the 70s took a baseball and dipped it into a paint can. And then he thought, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to do this every day for the next 50, 60 years. And so now you have to schedule an appointment and you go out to his house, and in the garage on a hydraulic lift is this paintball that's the size of a car. I mean, it weighs multiple tons. And it's really strange because you have to schedule an appointment. It's this guy's house in rural Indiana. And then when I got out there to see this thing, I was with my friend, and he just gave us paint rollers and a bucket of paint, and he said, all right, it's your turn. And so we did it, and for one day I was a world record holder because I had painted the world's largest ball of paint. And it was such a strange experience that I think it became the title of this book. But anyway, so here's that poem. Well, now you do.
We might need your road trip to Indiana.
Yeah,
I think Alexandria, Indiana.
All right.
If you Google world's largest ball of paint, he comes up long before I do. So truly, you can schedule an appointment and go. Yeah.
Interesting.
Is there a charge?
No. So truly, I thought we were just going to go look at this thing, and when I showed up, gave us paint and rollers and said, get to work. And there are pictures of me painting this enormous thing. And yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It was very strange. It was great. I loved it.
What color?
I want to say yellow.
That I don't.
But it may have also been pink. I don't know. My memory's blurry. My memory's not very good.
Okay.
No. World's largest ball of paint.
It is called page turn. That's the one I really know.
When Jay calls and tells me he's sober, I say, good for you. Though in my saute pan of pity for his life and his liquor slips, I taste nothing. I hang up and sit on the deck. First hot day of spring, the stupid fox squirrels getting laid in the trees, squeaking and thrusting against each other. I'm rarely happy for anyone. Each time I hear a beautiful voice, I loathe the chords in my own throat, their clumsy vibrations souring each note, so I drift into karaoke nights at the local dives and feel less alone in my own bad song. In 1978, my mother was kicked out of her church choir. She was so flat. A fact she loves to mention to this day, bragging those howling hymns. That same year, she drove her Volkswagen Bug through the North Dakota night to a cabin on the Canadian border, whipping through birch trees and juneberry bushes, chorus of cicadas. She fell asleep at the wheel and rolled her car 6 times. As a boy, I pressed the scars on her legs where she no longer has feeling, nerve endings burned out beneath the skin. I was once asked to cook spaghetti for 400 people. In those days, I drove around so dope-loaded my path was more rumble strip than road. I worked as a cook in a 10-table Italian restaurant, and after the head chef's dog died, we dug a hole between shed and swamp and lowered that furred mess. Later, the knife slipped, and the tip of my finger landed among diced onions. The nurse rubbed the nub and bone-studded end with alcohol and stitched my hand closed. I still feel nothing there. Middle finger, left hand, maybe as punishment for those numb years I lived. The gas station down the street has the best fried chicken in town. Most nights walking home, I pop in for a fried tender, the batter forming a crust under the heat lamps, golden layer sauce clings to. Sitting on the curb under that fluorescent sign, I love to watch the cars at stoplights, music and smoke pouring out of windows, red clouds of brake light exhaust. Thursday, I drove with Kate to a pot-shot, no-in town to marvel at the world's largest ball of paint. In the shed behind a farmhouse, it hung, baseball that's been dipped and smeared so many times it now weighs 2 tons. Visitors fly from all over the world for the chance to paint on a fresh coat and become the next world record holder until another tour group comes along. Even laughter is its own species of grief. The couple who owns the ball told us they add 1 layer every single day, a different color than the last, so the cross-section of this thing must be a gigantic jawbreaker. Kate and I smoothed rollers over the ball until the coat dried. The owners told us, "That's a world record." Dumb, gripping the still wet tools, we watched that paintball swing. Thank you. It's here. It was yellow.
It was yellow.
I have the certificate. Yeah, it says yellow. Yeah.
Oh, you got a Guinness certificate?
No, it's a printed out from ballofpaint.freehosting.net. But they made me a certificate. Yeah. So.
Oh.
Excellent. So if anybody has questions, or if there's, I'd love to have a discussion. But otherwise, I believe there are books there for sale.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, did you write most of these poems just individually, or did you write them for a book?
That's a great question. So all of this was my master's thesis, more or less.
Oh, okay.
And so I wrote this, what does that mean? Between 2016 and 2019 when I was in grad school. And I think later I became aware of a project underneath, but for the most part it was sort of, disconnected poems. But yeah, I think later, you start to notice themes that are coming along and you say, ooh, maybe I should come back to this idea. Yeah.
So, as you were putting the book together, I'm always fascinated by how you decide what poem is first, what one's last, etc.
Yeah, well, and that's I've discovered is a gargantuan task. I was fortunate at the time because it was my master's thesis. I had a thesis advisor, Donald Platt, who's a great poet, and I think his 19th book is coming out next month. And so he had a lot of experience in sort of how do you organize and arrange a book of poems, and so I was fortunate to have him sort of guide me in that process. But yeah, we sort of work through and hear, how are sounds playing off one another, or images, or that sort of thing. This one ends in rain and the next one starts with sun, that sort of thing, just small things like that. And I think you start to put it together. Yeah.
What else is in Alexandria, Indiana, besides the wall of paint?
Yeah. So we had worked up a thirst after painting this ball of paint, and we went to a Harley Davidson motorcycle bar, and we got cheese curds and probably drank Miller's or something like that. Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, it was truly a very, very small town. So, yeah, not a whole lot, but had a little local color.
Were you
for the
paint
day.
covered at the time?
No, I mean, I didn't know. I was wearing a collared shirt. I had no idea what I was getting into. And it was a January. It was just like a bizarre, warmly January day, so mid-60s. And we just said, hey, let's go out and do this thing. And I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And it was a really nice time. Yeah.
Have you sold the movie rights to that one?
Not yet.
Yeah,
But if
I
you know
agree.
anybody, I'm interested.
Yeah, no
Certainly.
That's actually a great.
It could be a series.
Yeah. Every layer.
Yeah, every layer.
And it is
Multi-layered.
Really visual to like picture what else they came upon.
In Alexandria,
Yeah,
Indiana.
and that was a great question.
Yeah.
So Kate, or
Yeah.
Katie?
Kate.
Kate, okay. So you mentioned Kate a lot. Is that a different person in each experience?
Kind of. Well, it's hard to say. What I will say is, so one, I was asked, hey, do you need to sign a release for this person? I
Right.
said, no, she doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And then I have received messages from perhaps a couple of people that said, I'm just Kate now.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's been quite interesting
That's right.
to have people be like, I remember this happening, but then
Yeah.
the next thing that happened didn't happen.
Uh-uh.
And it's like, oh, well, sorry.
Bits and pieces from different stages in your
Yeah.
life that you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
They're just all named Kate.
I guess so.
like that.
Yeah,
Well, when you said Kate doesn't exist, do you know who Chris Offutt is?
I don't know.
He's a novelist. He was here one night. And I asked him about, I said, wow, you did a lot of research on that. And he said, research? He says, I just make shit up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there is this tendency that if you say something confidently enough, everyone says, yes, of course.
You read his book, she's thinking he did a lot of research.
Yeah.
They just make it up.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
But
hard.
what makes you think you can't write a novel?
There's nothing, I mean, other than the fact that I'm quite lazy. I'm tremendously lazy.
No,
And I,
it's-
but you know, like a long one is maybe 200 words, and a novel is 60,000. You know, so
He
it's
explained how he does novels to remember where the characters are at. It's a big deal.
certainly, you know, and it's one of those things that, like, I don't know, perhaps I could sit down and do it, but I have the fortune or maybe misfortune of I have quite a few friends who are novelists, and then I think about what I would work on in comparison to them, and it's like, well, what would so and so say? And then it makes me self-conscious, which is not a good way to look at things, but yeah, it's totally maybe.
I think you can do it.
Hey, great, thank you. Maybe I will.
You have to come back to Beaverdale Books.
I would love to come back to Beaverdale Books.
when
It's
the
a
novel
wonderful
comes out.
bookstore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
Talk about the cover.
I would love to talk about the cover. So the cover is a collage made by an artist named Jack Felice. He and I actually went to college together. We know each other. We're buddies. Actually, on the 12th of August, he and I are doing an event in Tallahassee.
Really?
Tallahassee, Florida. He and I went to Florida State together, and he's still there in Tallahassee. And so I'll fly down to Florida, and I'll read a few poems, and he'll have collages and prints up in the gallery, and hopefully it'll be a fun little event. Yeah, but he's a great collage artist, and I reached out to him and I said, can I please have something for my book? And he was agreeable, so I'm very grateful for it because he does really, really fantastic artwork.
So, did you just give him a snippet of the book, or yeah? How did he put this collage together?
Yeah, well, so and that's exactly what he asked. He said, hey, can I have 5 or 6 poems so I can sort of figure out what's going on? And then he put together a couple of things, and I said, oh, that's not right. And then out of the blue, he actually posted something new on Instagram, and I immediately contacted him. I said, Jack, that's it. I want that one. He said, oh, okay, you can have it. And so,
Wow,
yeah.
that's so cool.
But there are so many things in the cover that I think work well. There's a lot of food and just, I mean, there's all these colors and layers, and I just...
Here's Kate's foot. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And Kate's in there. He knew.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Jack has met Kate, certainly. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions?
Let me know if I can help you guys find anything.
Yeah, that guy in the middle.
I was gonna ask about the cover.
Yeah.
He's got a question for you. Are you buying the beer afterwards?
Am I buying the big?
I'll buy it first round.
You know, having known Charlie since he was a wee one at probably
Truly, 3 years old, maybe?
Yeah, 3. We were neighbors in Virginia. I always knew that he and his siblings were way smarter than I ever dreamed of being. And it amazes me because his older brother is very gifted, but in a left brain sort of way. And to see a sibling who is as gifted, but in a right brain sort of way, blows me away.
That's very sweet of you to say. Security can have her escorted out.
And then there's the girl at the end who, maybe whips them both. I don't know. But it is
She certainly
like
does, yeah.
when you sit down and listen and have lived sort of parallel, your mastery of the language is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure I still don't really understand all the poems though, so.
Oh, I don't either. I mean, genuinely.
Yeah,
So,
really well done.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, but thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you for coming to Des Moines.
Absolutely.